Hey, Strategy Simplified listeners, Eden with Management Consultant here, and today I am so excited to share with you an interview that I did with Ish, one of our coaches at Management Consulted. We talked all about the bridge programs. So this is for advanced degree candidates, either you're a JD, an MD, PhD, or maybe even working in the educational space. So definitely take a listen as we dive in to share with you all about the programs that are coming up for you. Also, check out the link in the show notes where we will talk about the application deadlines so you know exactly what programs are available to you right now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having on, Eden. So my name is Ish, and I'm currently one of the interview and prep coaches on Management Consulted. Previously, I was a BCG consultant, and prior to that, I obtained my doctoral degree in neuroscience. During my time at BCG, I worked on several projects in healthcare, particularly pharma, medtech, payer provider work, and also a few projects in like public sector and social impact. And I was also actively involved in recruitment at BCG. So particularly, I was interviewed first round candidates, and I represented BCG at MBA recruitment events at top business schools. And I also led workshops for the advanced degree Bridge to BCG program, which we will be talking about today.
That's awesome. We are going to talk about that today. So can you break it down a little bit for me? What exactly is Bridge to BCG?
Yeah, so Bridge to BCG is one of the many summer immersion programs or bridge programs for advanced degree candidates. So in short, we call them ADCs. Various companies use various terms for it, but BCG calls them ADCs. And so ADCs are those who are, let's say, currently enrolled in their final year or have recently completed a non-MBA advanced degree, such as a PhD, JD, or MD program. And at the same time, postdocs, medical residents, practicing physicians, university professors can also be considered ADCs. The exact criteria differ by company, but that's what I just mentioned is BCG's criteria. Another important distinction is that folks with one of the professional degrees that I mentioned, but with a number of years of, let's say, industry experience are not considered ADC. So that's a nuance right there. And experienced hires go through typically a different recruitment channel. But anyway, so back to what the Bridge to BCG program actually is. So it's a 2 to 3 day long program that's offered in lieu of what MBA students go through, which is a 10 to 12 week summer internship. And the reason for a shorter program like that is that ADCs have a very busy schedule, whether it be in the lab or in the clinic or teaching classes. Summers can be very occupied for these folks, so it's very tough to dedicate 10 to 12 weeks towards an internship. Furthermore, what I'll add is that the Bridge to BCG program enables ADCs to do two major things. So one is learn about the company, learn about the culture, and network with individuals directly. And second is to solve a mini case or do some exercises to showcase your skills and talent. So that's basically what the Bridge to BCG program is. And final thing that I'll add right there is that most folks who complete this program successfully are invited for decision round interviews with their office of choice at BCG.
Huge incentive to do a bridge program right there.
Exactly.
So a couple follow-up questions. When does this program typically occur? And also when are applications due?
Yeah, great question. So the season for Bridge to BCG is Q1, Q2, so Q1, Q2 of any given year. So right now we are in that season, and that's when this episode will be aired. So folks who are interested in the Bridge to BCG program should start paying attention to deadlines soon. And I know here at Management Consulted, we keep everyone updated with deadlines of the Bridge to BCG program, but also similar programs on a regular basis. So check that information out. The application deadlines are typically around February or March, and the actual program takes place in April or May. So the program typically is in person. There are virtual options that might be offered depending on the year. And as I mentioned, the program itself lasts for 2 to 3 days. And typically, BCG will cover all your travel and hotel expenses for you to attend the program. Another important thing is that following the Bridge to BCG program, a full-time offer may be given out. And this is, of course, contingent on the performance in the decision round interview. And what happens is the start date in the full-time role is for the following year. So, for example, let's say you imagine a candidate who successfully goes through the program this year in 2025. And receives that full-time offer, they will be starting with the company sometime in 2026. So that's basically an overview of how the timeline works.
Okay, wonderful. Are there only select offices that host this program, or is it every office? What does that look like?
Yeah, so Bridge to BCG is offered in the North American offices, so in particular the US and Canadian offices only. However, this does not mean that advanced degrees are not accepted to other worldwide BCG offices. They absolutely are, but the recruitment channel might be different. So it's usually best to check in with the local recruitment folks to make sure that what the appropriate channel for advanced degree recruitment is. Within the US, there are certain hub offices that will host the program from that region. So, for example, the Chicago office will host the Bridge to BCG program on behalf of all the offices in the Midwest. Sometimes they host some of the Canadian offices as well. It really depends on the year. And even though you might be interested in a smaller office in the Midwest, you will all end up with other folks in the Midwest in the Chicago office. So, and as we advise a lot of our mentees here at Management Consulted, office selection is definitely a big factor and an important factor. So, and folks should be paying attention to that as part of the Bridge to BCG application as well.
Is it important for candidates to apply now, or is it okay for them to wait until the application deadline? Like, is there any kind of preference shown on early applicants?
Yeah, so there is no such preference that's shown. Typically, we recommend folks to apply whenever you have your application materials ready. You can certainly apply to the 11th hour if that's when your application materials are ready, but as soon as you have those things ready, we recommend you to apply. And that means it's going to take some time. So getting your resume ready, your cover letter ready, all of those aspects, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later today. Those are important factors, and you should start to get those things ready as soon as possible.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's fast forward past the application process. Can you tell me what the day-to-day looks like in the actual Bridge program?
Yeah, so overall, the program is like really fun, and it's an intense 2 to 3 day sprint, and you meet a ton of people within the company. You learn a lot of information about consulting and BCG as a company, and you also get to put your brain to work and crack some case problems. So the program has many components, and that varies from year to year. And I'll just give an illustrative example here. So let's say on day one, folks might be traveling to the program in the morning from wherever they're coming from, and then arrive in the afternoon for the opening session. So during the opening session, there might be recruiters there who will welcome you to the company and the office and will give you a rundown of what the program is and what the expectations are. And then on top of that, there might be a lot of like opening talks from senior folks at the companies. So they themselves might be of like an ADC background. They might talk to you about what the firm culture is, the different types of client work, and a lot of other related topics. And then later that afternoon, you might be assigned to teams with fellow participants. and given a problem solving exercise. So let's say this will be with a current consultant. So I was one of those consultants who guided folks through the exercises. And several hours can be dedicated to the case exercise. So afterwards, what happens is you can chill a bit, you can relax a bit. And then in the evening, you go out for dinner and drinks where you mingle with folks in the company. So there might be senior folks like partners or managing directors and partners who might also be there. So that's kind of what the first day is. The next morning, you might begin, of course, with breakfast, but there's also workshops that are delivered on interview prep because following the bridge program, there are decision round interviews, and BCG really wants to make sure that candidates are prepared very well for that. And during lunch, right after that session happens, there might be, let's say, a panel of current ADC consultants where folks can ask any kind of transparent question about life at BCG. So things around work-life balance, performance reviews, things of that nature. And then later that afternoon, there might be other sessions, let's say on various practice areas and or like affinity groups, such as Women at BCG. And that's kind of what concludes the workshop. And then folks afterwards will head back to their respective homes.
Does your resume pass the 7-second test? That's right, your resume has just 7 seconds to make an impression on a recruiter. So that means your resume needs to be amazing, it needs to be killer, it needs to be fully optimized. So it does what it needs to do, which is to convert your interaction, your impression into an interview. Don't leave your future up to chance. Work with a management consulted resume and cover letter editing team to edit your application docs today. Our team works tirelessly and meticulously to look at every single letter, word, number, line, bullet point, and section on your resume so that it's optimized for consulting so you can maximize your opportunities. Work with us today via the link in this episode's show notes. Fun fact, over 80% of editing clients land at least one interview with their transformed docs. We'd love to work with you. Again, check out the links in the show notes to learn more and purchase today. Hey, Strategy Simplified, are you ready to land your dream consulting or corporate strategy job? On the Management Consulted job board, we've made it easier than ever to do just that. Create your free job seeker profile today and instantly unlock access to hundreds of top-tier job opportunities, all at no cost to you. Don't wait. Start your journey towards your dream career now through the Management Consulted job board. Your future in consulting is just one click away. Find the link to create your job seeker profile at the link in this episode's show notes.
Let's double tap on the problem solving activity. Can you maybe explore that a little bit more and tell us what that might look like?
Yeah, so when I was at BCG, I led one of these problem solving sessions for Bridge to BCG with a small team. And what happens is usually they receive a number of actual scrub slides related to a project. And there were several of these small teams. So I was leading one of them, and then there were other consultants leading other ones as well. And the team had this task of like shortlisting a few key slides for a client readout. And they had to also produce an executive summary and presenting it to the client. And the client in this case was me as part of the small team. And then I would basically give them feedback on how that process went. And these exercises vary, again, year to year. Just because this happened one year doesn't mean that this will repeatedly happen again. But again, the goal is to introduce them and give them a preview to what I call consulting ways of working. And for BCG to assess how much effort folks are putting in or whether they're cut out for consulting or not. And then I also talked about, in your previous question, I talked about a separate interview prep session, and this is slightly different. So this is also something that I led This is to prepare folks for those decision round interviews. So there was a workshop that I led where each component of the case interview was broken down. So such as frameworks, math, brainstorming. So very similar to what we do with our clients here at Management Consulted. And then I would basically give advice to that small group on best practices, walk them through a few slides, give them mini exercises or drills, and then they would share their answers back with a group, and then they would basically get feedback.
Okay. So all of that being said, would you say that the Bridge program is evaluative in any way? Like are candidates
so it
evaluated
is
through the process?
definitely, so that's a good question. It is definitely evaluated. Folks are, I would say, go through some kind of a feedback process, and it's not an evaluation criteria that is solid. It does change year over year. The feedback typically goes to the recruiters and might be shared with the decision round interviewers. The evaluation is more so, I would say, soft and qualitative, and it's definitely not along the lines of like an interview scorecard. The feedback involves giving qualitative info about the candidate, how well they participated in all the events, did they show genuine interest in the company, and how likely would the candidate be willing to join BCG if given an offer? Because a lot of these candidates are also attending other programs like McKinsey Bain, so they need to make sure that they would actually join BCG. So that kind of means that everything that a candidate does matters, how they behave, how they interact with teammates and people in the company. But that should not by any means scare folks. My advice is to really be genuine and show enthusiasm and motivation that you want to be there and you want to be part of the company. And candidates don't need to prepare for any of the workshops that I mentioned. It's fairly straightforward, and instructions are given on the day of the session.
Okay. So what would you say are the key benefits of participating in a program like this?
Yeah, so the main benefit is that this is an early recruitment channel for ADCs. Depending on the year in the office, the bulk of ADC recruitment takes place via this channel. The program does guarantee a decision round interview, which is like a big benefit. And there are very few programs out there that do such a guarantee. So you can imagine that you go through the program, and then by May or June of that year, you pass your decision round interviews, and as a candidate, you already know that you have landed a full-time offer for the following year, which is a huge relief for many folks, especially those, let's say, who are in PhD programs. They can focus on finishing their dissertation research, or medical residents can focus on finishing up their residency. It's really a huge relief. And besides that, there's a lot of ancillary benefits like getting exposure to a top global company like BCG. You'll see a lot of people put this experience on their resume as well. Even on LinkedIn, they'll put it that they were a participant in Bridge to BCG, even though they did not get an offer. So it can open up some doors in that manner.
Okay. And I definitely want to ask you more about that in a second, the networking opportunities. But can you explain the start dates? I have a lot of advanced degree candidates that ask, how does the start dates work for this particular program? Once I'm in an offer, is it flexible?
Yeah, so the program itself takes place, as I mentioned, in May or April, May. Of the given year, but then the start dates would be for the following year. So let's say the program happens in 2025. The start dates would actually be sometime in 2026, and it's very flexible. The companies do understand that you have a PhD dissertation, things don't move in the appropriate timeline. So your start might be anywhere from January of the following year to like September, October. Again, this really depends on the capacity of start dates that they have, and these are decided on a yearly basis. But in general, they're very flexible.
I always like to tell candidates when I meet with them that the words "it depends"
Yeah.
you can assign to anything, and I feel like that's a good phrase for here.
Exactly. Yeah. It so much of this is dependent on the context, the situation, the office. So it's always best to check in with that year's recruitment cycle and the recruitment folks to make sure that you have the most accurate information.
That's good. Okay, can you explain the networking opportunities available inside of this program and maybe as a result of this program?
Yeah, so there is many opportunities to chat and meet with BCG consultants and senior leaders while folks are at the office for the program. So as I mentioned, there are these happy hours and networking dinners, which are more like the formal opportunities to sit down with BCGers. And here you can ask questions, learn about their journey in the company, learn about their favorite projects, things of that nature. And my recommendation is to expose yourself and talk to as many faces as you can. I know it can really be exhausting, but take that opportunity to the best of your use because it is unique. You're not going to get that in any other setting. I know some top candidates who are very proactive, they tend to set up or at least try to set up separate 10 or 15-minute meetings with consultants or leaders in the office beforehand. So they'll do things like send a quick email that, hey, I'll be in the office on this date. Would love to meet you for 10 minutes and say, hi, I'm very interested in your manufacturing practice area or any other practice area, and I would love to learn more about that. So it's really not required, and it doesn't guarantee any opportunities, but those who are proactive seek that out as an additional networking opportunity.
Okay, wonderful. So let's talk about the application process. Can you tell me what kind of materials and resources candidates need in order to apply for Bridge to BCG?
Yeah, so the materials are kind of the same as any other recruitment channels within the company. So as we advise a lot of our mentees here at Management Consulted, having a polished and well-done resume, there is no alternative to that. There's also a need for an effective cover letter that highlights sort of the most important aspects of who you are and your narrative. A lot of ADCs don't just have a business style resume, unlike MBA students. So rather they have something that's like an academic CV or any other type of long form document. So it's really essential to distill that down into one page. And the core things to highlight is, of course, like leadership, entrepreneurship, analytical skills, and these should come through both your academic experiences and also extracurricular stuff that you have done. The cover letter should also be around a page, and this should talk about your narrative and experiences. It should highlight a few key stories, such as why you are a good fit for the firm. And there should also be a brief description of what motivates you to leave academia or medical practice or your law degree. And why you want to make that switch to consulting. What drove you towards that kind of a decision making? So yeah, that's very briefly. I know it's a very dense topic, and we here at Management Consultant cover this over many sessions, many articles, and offerings that we have for our clients. But that's just trying to distill it to one answer here.
And it's definitely not good enough for you to say, I'm tired of medicine, I want out.
Yeah.
It's good to have a very solid reasoning behind that, something very logical.
Yep.
Streamlined, makes sense. And we do help candidates with resumes and cover letters. We'll talk about that later, but that's a huge part of what we do for advanced degrees or ADCs. So can you tell me about the screening process? Is there a case interview that's required, or are they just selected based on their documents? How does that work?
Yeah, so the screening process really changes year after year. There's always like new technology, new things that the company implements. So you can't really say what's going to happen every year, but I can give you the insight based on the most recent year. So after you apply, you can expect there to be some kind of a problem-solving gains, such as BCG Pi metrics. And we have articles on this on the Management Consultant website, which I encourage folks to read. So this is basically an assessment that measures strategy skills and emotional and cognitive traits. There's also an invite that is sent out for a one-way interview. And this sounds kind of intimidating, but it's basically you're sitting in front of a camera and you're recording yourself answering some behavioral or fit questions. Things like, tell me why you're interested in BCG, or tell me a time when XYZ happened. So that's kind of the answers that you're giving, and you just record yourself for 90 seconds to 2 minutes, something of that nature. And yeah, so that's, I would say, part of the screening process. And in terms of like interviews, traditionally, there haven't been any interviews ahead of the Bridge to BCG program, but the format actually changed last year, where round one interviews take place ahead of the program. I don't know what they're going to do this year or in upcoming years, but that's what happened last year. And the round one interview is basically a case interview. And this could be, let's say, the automated BCG chatbot case, which I know we advise folks on here at Management Consulted. And there is also a separate fit interview. And the reason for having this round one interview beforehand is mainly to invite higher quality of candidates to the actual program.
This makes a lot of sense. And it's quite interesting. You kind of always have to stay on your toes when it comes to being ready for fit and case interviews. Definitely. So this is an incredibly competitive program. Can you give us the best piece of advice for candidates that want to make it in? And then also, once they make it in, how do they leverage that to the max potential in the future?
Yeah, great question. So I think the most important thing is to make sure you have a solid resume and cover letter, that you put time and effort towards that, and it really shines who you are and your experiences. That's really important. And second is make sure that your behavioral responses, your fit interview responses on the one-way interview are done very well, and that you give really solid responses. So those are, I would say, the two key things that you need to do. And additionally, if you're not from a target school or let's say a top postdoc or residency program, what I recommend is for you to network with people in the company or the office beforehand, and try to get a referral if possible. It's no different than what we recommend to folks from non-target schools in general. And I think the second question that you asked was like how to make the most out of the experience. And for this, I recommend folks to really be genuine, stay motivated, and have a good time. Like, you need to genuinely enjoy meeting people from the company. It's going to be tiring, but that's what you signed up for. And if you're an introvert, I mean, try to bring out the extroverted side of yourself for a day or two. And then this is really going to maximize your exposure to other BCGers, which is really necessary for this.
So good. All right. So for those candidates that sadly do not get accepted into these kinds of programs, what opportunities do they have?
Yeah, so as we talked about, the program is super competitive. And even if someone does not get in, I encourage them not to lose hope, because there's the regular recruitment channel. And this happens every year, and this begins in the summer. So deadlines can be anywhere between June and August. And I know plenty of folks who did not get into the Bridge to BCG program, but they reapply through the regular recruitment route. And BCG does not see you as any less for being rejected from the Bridge to BCG program earlier in the year. And I know someone who actually got rejected from the program because they had too much consulting experience in their resume. And the reason for that is the program is actually designed to be like an introductory exposure to consulting. Like I mentioned, through some of the workshops and programs that are done, it's really meant to be introductory. So someone with a lot of consulting experience, it's very possible to be rejected. So I would say just don't take offense to that and just reapply during the regular round.
Great. So as you reflect on your own recruitment journey, which, side note, weren't you a black belt candidate? Didn't you go through our program before? So when you look back on that, can you tell me what other programs you also applied to outside of Bridge to BCG, and if those programs are still being offered? I'd love to hear that.
So during my recruitment period, I applied to numerous programs. So I personally applied to all 3 bridge programs by MBB firms, which are McKinsey Insight, Bain Advantage, and of course, Bridge to BCG, like we talked about. So all 3 programs are very different in design. Like for example, the Bain Advantage program is a full week-long internship where folks are staffed on an actual Bain project, and participants are typically paid a stipend for it. They also get, let's say, a Bain laptop to do their work. And there's a presentation at the end of the week based on the slides that you produce. And that typically decides whether you get a full-time offer or not. In addition to that, there might be follow-up second round interviews, and this is depending on the specific Bain office that you have applied to. I also applied to Life Science Boutique program from Clearview Healthcare Partners. This is called Connect to Clearview, and this is also a very popular program among advanced degree candidates. And I also got an offer from Clearview, and I never ended up going because I ended up at BCG instead.
Wonderful. So can you tell me the difference between the advanced degree programs at MBB and boutiques? I know you touched on it a little bit, but if you could do a deep dive, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the goal of the programs is I would say the same in terms of like providing exposure to the company and assessing candidates. Of course, life sciences firms focus more on like the life sciences sector, so such as pharma, biotech, medtech. However, the exact format, again, it depends on the company. So for example, Trinity Life Sciences has a program called Transition to Trinity. And as part of the program, teams spend considerable time creating slides on a case problem. And they're trying to mimic like an actual project work stream or more like a case competition, let's say. And then when I participated in the Connect to Clearview program, they offered a few project overview sessions where current consultants spoke about the projects that they recently worked on, including showcasing some scrub slides, and talking about what the projects entail. So I really actually enjoyed that. So yeah, those are 2 examples, but a lot of this varies by company.
Wonderful. So there are so many different programs out there for advanced degree candidates, and I'm speaking now to our listeners. If you're looking for application deadlines or to find out which programs are even available to you as a JD, MD, PhD, or similar, please check our application deadlines tracker, which is linked in the show notes. We'd love to, help you figure out where you might fit inside the industry. So Ish, can you tell me your best piece of recruitment advice for advanced degree candidates?
Yeah, I mean, these programs are continually getting very competitive. There's a lot more advanced degree candidates applying to these programs each year as people are leaving academia, as they're leaving clinical practice, as they're leaving their law degrees. And due to this competitive nature, I really recommend folks to start the prep process early. And I recommend folks to go through a coaching program. Since a lot of advanced degree candidates don't have the business background or the education or even a casing network that a lot of MBA students get at their business schools, advanced degree candidates just don't have access to that. So comprehensive like prep programs like Black Belt offered by MC, especially where you can do one-on-one coaching with one of our coaches, especially if you're in advanced degree, I recommend reaching out to an advanced degree coach so that they can really help you out in that process because they know what they went through and how to best craft your stories, they know what the challenges are. And this can really help jumpstart the prep process for you.
Well, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say Black Belts and Super Prep are both incredibly helpful programs to help you learn how to narrate your story off page, as well as we help you craft your story on page. And then, of course, getting the business acumen and getting the case interview skills up to par is it's an excellent opportunity for you to do that. So I highly recommend, if you haven't checked out those programs, you guys, please do. The sooner, the better, because you might be expected to case. Let's see, we're recording this today on January 20th. Don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but applications are going to be due very, very soon. And now is the time to prepare. Okay, so one last question, because I know we've gone over time, and I so appreciate you taking extra time with me today. Can you tell me your craziest travel story?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the craziest, but this is top of mind for me because this recently happened while I was traveling over the holidays. So I was going to Asia, and I had a layover in Istanbul, Turkey. And because of the holiday craziness, there was a lot of stuff going on in the airport. And my layover ended up being like more than 15 hours. So I was just literally sitting in the airport for 15 hours. Like I almost went crazy. But yeah, that was like a really long layover that I did not anticipate. But I made it to my final destination safe and sound.
You didn't go and explore the city?
No, I decided not to. The airport is so huge. There's just so much like stuff to like do in the airport, and I didn't know like when the delay would, because they kept delaying over and over, and so I just didn't want to take that risk of like going out into the city and then coming back, not knowing when the flight would actually take off.
See, I have this personal bucket list item of I want to go to all of these international cities, airports, just to hang out for 24 hours and see what all you can do. So you can check that off of your own.
Yeah, I would say like if I were to give recommendations, I do travel international quite a bit. Some of the best airports, of course, the Qatar airport is fantastic. The Singapore airport is fantastic. Yeah, so those are like two great ones to go through. Huge airports, lots to do. That's what I recommend.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Ish. We really appreciate you joining our podcast, and we so appreciate you having us. We so appreciate you being one of our coaches.
Awesome.
So, have a great day.
Thanks so much, Eden. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you heard this. We'd appreciate the support. Also, check out the link in the show notes for all the resources that we promised today.